Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast presented by Visa, a network working for everyone. Michael Beller and Derek Van Riper here on a Sunday night, working for you, helping you start to get your waiver claims in order for Week 6 after what was a wild Week 5 Sunday. Easily the most exciting, the most fun, the most fantasy explosive Sunday that we've had to date this season, DVR. It's been a great day, and Chiefs-Bills still ahead of us, so promises to be a great night as well.
Yeah, really looking forward to tonight's matchup. It's great for single game DFS and great for season long if you're still looking to make up some ground this week as well.
Yeah, they've got quite the billing to live up to after what we saw in both windows. Both game windows were really fun today. We had the craziness of the Packers and Bengals and 5 straight missed field goals, any one of which would have won the game for the Kickers team, but it took that 6-1 for Mason Crosby to get the Packers a win in overtime. Crazy game between the Chargers and the Browns, 47-42 win for the Chargers. We'll probably never see a defense force an opposing player into the end zone to put the opposing team ahead ever again, no matter how many football games we watch in our life. So just a crazy day, and what a capper we have ahead of us in Bills and Chiefs. We're going to look even farther ahead, though, and start getting ourselves ready to place some waiver claims for Week 6. There are at least 4 players that we want to get to here, and maybe we can get to a few more depending on how fast we get through the first 4, but definitely 4 guys who are likely at the top of waiver claim lists, regardless of what you already have on your team. The first definitely is Devontae Booker. Saquon Barkley left the Giants' loss to the Cowboys with an ankle injury. Obviously, no update just yet. That game just ended, half an hour ago, but it does seem like the sort of injury that's likely to keep Barkley out for a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks perhaps on the early side. So Devontae Booker takes over as the primary running back for the Giants and was relatively effective, and certainly from a fantasy standpoint, DVR, 16 carries for 42 yards and a touchdown, also caught 3 passes for 16 yards and a score. So you're talking about 58 yards from scrimmage, 19 touches, 2 touchdowns. It did seem like they were comfortable just plugging him into the Saquon role. And now we've had this a few weeks in a row. A couple weeks ago, it was Chuba Hubbard. Last week, it was Damian Williams. This week, it's Devontae Booker. I guess the question here is, should you be treating Booker the same way you treated Hubbard a couple of weeks ago and Williams last week?
Yeah, I think it's a good comp. I mean, I think this offense is good enough. We'll see what happens with Daniel Jones. He also left that game with an injury, and he's probably week to week at this point. But with Booker, I think the key is that he is really kind of a 3-down back. Even though he's not nearly as good as Saquon Barkley, he can handle all the functions. He can take all the volume. He can be a 4-yard per carry guy that catches 4 or 5 balls when needed in this Giants offense. They're a team that will often be playing from behind, so I think that pass-catching role week to week is pretty safe for Booker for whatever period of time Barkley might miss. So yeah, I would say comparing him to Chuba Hubbard in terms of his week-to-week expectations and value is a great starting point.
Yeah, you've got Elijah Penny listed as a fullback for this team. He had 1 carry in this game. The only other player listed on their running back depth chart is Gary Brightwell, who was a 6th-round pick in this year's draft. So if Barkley is going to be out for 3-4 weeks, maybe they go out there and sign a street free agent and bring him in. But it does look like this is Booker's show in the backfield. And as we talk about all the time, when it comes to running backs, volume is one of the starting points that we want to go for. You'd rather have a superstar running back getting a little less volume than a just a guy sort of guy like Booker getting all the volume, but volume certainly a running back's friend. And as it stands right now, it seems like Booker's going to have that for the better part of a month going forward. So definitely going to be putting in some claims on Devontae Booker this week. Someone else who's also going to be getting plenty of attention, Booker's teammate, Cadarius Tony. It was an ugly game for the Giants, going up against a very good Cowboys team. And then you have the injuries to Saquon and to Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones particularly looked like a scary one with him leaving with the concussion. But Cadarius Tony, a bright spot for the Giants in this game. 10 catches for 189 yards, DVR. And this comes after a week where he first got an opportunity to really be a meaningful player in their offense and made a lot of plays for them. A week ago, 6 catches for 78 yards in that game. He's getting these opportunities because of the injuries to Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. But with what we've seen from him, DVR, and the fact that he has a first-round pick for this team this year, I think he's done enough. I think we have to assume he's done enough to keep a role in this offense, even when Shepard and Slayton are back healthy.
Yeah, I wonder if Kenny Golladay is going to miss time too. He left with a knee injury on Sunday, so that could be another path for Kadarius Toney to hold on to a significant role in this offense, they could be the kind of team that trades a receiver before the trade deadline. That wouldn't be surprising either. And we're talking about a guy in Tony who's a first-round pick, so someone that they want to have as part of their future, someone they have high expectations for. And I think the way they were utilizing him, it seemed like a lot of the time I was watching Red Zone this afternoon, Cadarius Tony was catching a lot of balls near the line of scrimmage to kind of pump up that volume, but he can do more than that. He can be dangerous after the catch. There's a lot to like here. I don't think a possible stretch of Mike Glennon starting at quarterback would crater the value of this passing game either. So I'm pretty interested in Tony because I think there are a few ways it can work out given the state of the rest of the pass catchers in this Giants offense right now.
We've got a question from Jai. Jai, thanks for watching us live on YouTube right now. Well, who's your number one waiver wire player this week? For me, it's pretty easily Devontae Booker. You on the same page there?
Yeah, I am. I like him more than Alex Collins in leagues where Collins is out there. I know there's a good chance Collins was scooped up in a lot of leagues simply because we knew going into that Thursday night game that Chris Carson wasn't right. So first come, first serve happened on Wednesday and Thursday morning for a lot of people. So I would say unless Collins is available, in which case maybe it's more of a toss-up. But Devontae Booker is a more dynamic player than Alex Collins. I don't see Alex Collins handling a 3-down role consistently. And I think the Seattle offense without Russell Wilson is a heck of a lot less enticing than it would have been if Wilson were healthy.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that really on display in the Seahawks game against the Rams on Thursday night. Alex Collins, that game got off to a slow start. It was lower scoring in the first half than I think a lot of us expected. But Alex Collins ripped off a couple of chunk plays with the few touches he did get in the first half. Then Russell Wilson suffers the finger injury, and we really didn't see a ton from Alex Collins the rest of the game. Had that garbage time reception late in the fourth quarter that juiced his numbers a little bit. And even the end of game numbers don't look great, but without that little garbage time reception that I think he turned into like a 15 or 17-yard gain, they look a whole lot worse. So I would be more concerned about the Seahawks dropping down to Geno Smith, I think, than the Giants dropping down to Mike Glennon. And Daniel Jones likely not going to miss as much time if he misses any time as Russell Wilson is going to miss as well. And then Chris Carson could be back earlier than Devontae Booker or than Saquon Barkley. So it all adds up to a scenario where Devontae Booker, definitely the best running back who's going to be widely available this week. And I think likely the best overall player as well. So Jai, that's who we are looking at as our number one waiver claim for this week. We're getting our rosters in order, right? That's what we're always doing here in the fantasy football world, no matter if it's Sunday night going into next week looking at waivers or if it's Thursday getting our lineups set. We're all about getting those rosters ready. And you want to be ready in all situations in life. Roman is here to help you do that as well. Go to GetRoman.com/fantasy now to talk to a U.S. licensed healthcare professional. With Roman, you can get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. A U.S. licensed healthcare professional will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, it ships to you with free 2-day shipping. The whole process is straightforward and discreet, and getting started is simple. Just go to GetRoman.com/fantasy and complete an online visit. Take care of your ED without leaving home. Complete an online visit today to connect with a doctor and take care of it. Go to GetRoman.com/fantasy now to get $15 off your first month. Again, get started right now. GetRoman.com/fantasy and get $15 off your first month of treatment. All right, DVR, a couple more guys who I want to make sure we sneak into this episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. The next one is Marques Callaway. This was someone who the fantasy community was really excited about back in the preseason when we knew that Michael Thomas was going to miss as much time this season as he was. Callaway put together a couple of impressive preseason performances, and that had him rocketing up draft boards back at the end of August and beginning of September. Then the season started, and he didn't do a whole lot those first couple of games for the Saints. That had him back on the waiver wire. But then he comes up with a pretty big game for the Saints in their win over Washington on Sunday. 4 grabs on 8 targets, 85 yards, and 2 touchdowns. We should say that one of those touchdowns was on an end of first half Hail Mary, so can't really bank on that. But it's the 8 targets and the fact that we saw Jameis Winston again make 3 really big plays down the field. The touchdown to Callaway, the Hail Mary, that's one. But his second touchdown was the same sort of way. And then Deontay Harris, a 72-yard touchdown reception as well. So we know Jameis can push the ball down the field. Callaway coming through as someone who can be dangerous in that sort of role. I think he's definitely a step behind the 2 Giants we talked about, but someone who could start filling roles for fantasy managers with buys kicking off in week 6.
Yeah, the Saints are one of those teams that won't play in week 6, but there's value beyond that here because the schedule's really favorable for the Saints passing attack. in the weeks after their bye. They're on the road against Seattle in week 7, home against Tampa Bay in week 8, home against the Falcons in week 9, on the road against the Titans in week 10.
Ooh.
So, with more deeper rosters being needed because teams are going to be on bye throughout that stretch, there's more interest in Callaway because we're going to be looking at guys in the 45 to 60 range at wide receiver, and we're going to have to play them, and we're looking for guys that have good matchups if we're digging that deep. The key number you mentioned, 8 targets, right? I mean, that almost matters to me more than the 2 TDs, especially with the context that one being that end of half Hail Mary. So I love the upcoming schedule for Callaway. I think he is worth picking up and holding on to through the week 6 bye.
I mean, those 4 matchups, those are 4 of the best, maybe 7 or 8 wide receiver matchups you've got available to you right now. And a lot of those teams, too, you're going to have them probably being able to put up some points on the other side. So the Saints are going to have to play in some high-scoring games, similar to what they did in week 5 against Washington. Marques Callaway definitely fitting in here right off the bat, and someone who, by the time week 7 rolls around and the Saints are back in action, maybe you do end up wanting to start him because of the bye situation that you'll be looking at as well. We're at that point of the year. We don't care too much about depth necessarily early in the season. We have arrived at it now, though, where you're going to have to start leaning on your depth, and we're going to see some of those depth teams really jump up standings as they're able to plug in players who aren't that big of a drop-off from their starters. Marques Callaway at least fits into that part of the fantasy picture. You also mentioned Alex Collins. I think he's worth discussing after what we saw from Seattle in week 5 and their loss to the Rams. You're right that he did get scooped up in plenty of leagues last week. If you go to CBS, if you're playing on CBS, he's got a roster rate in the low 60s there. Over on Yahoo, he's back down around 40% still. So still generally available in a lot of places. And this Chris Carson neck injury sounds like it's going to be something that's chronic, something that even when he is back playing for Seattle, he's going to be dealing with. So I think with what we saw from Alex Collins back in week 4, when he had 10 carries for 44 yards, 2 catches for 34 yards, and found the end zone, he already seemed to be creating a role alongside Chris Carson. Probably not one that made him fantasy relevant, but certainly one that was going to have him as a regular player in Seattle's offense. Now with Carson looking at this neck injury as something that could, keep him out for a little bit more time or even hinder him when he is back on the field, I think there's going to be something of a timeshare in Seattle. What really concerns me is the Geno Smith as the starting quarterback. He looked fine in relief of Russell Wilson in that game on Thursday, but obviously it is a much, much different offense with Geno in and Russell out. So Alex Collins feeling like more like a depth back to me. But again, with the buys coming, could be someone who ends up jumping into starting lineups as people are working guys in and out of those lineups.
Yeah, and I think the player I'm looking at in really deep leagues is Rashad Penny. I mean, he's on IR right now, could be back in week 6, but former first rounder, a guy that has had a ton of injuries throughout his career that have really kept him from making the impact that the Seahawks would have expected when they made that decision to draft him in the first round a few years ago. If they start to split the workload between Collins and Penny, I could actually see Penny overtaking that backfield over time if Carson's injury does, in fact, turn out to be more of a long-term problem.
Yeah, definitely a guy who in deeper leagues could work into the mix. And I'll throw one more out there before we wrap things up here. How about Romantre Stevenson? He was active for the first time all season in week 5, and Damian Harris fumbled going into the end zone in that game, and then we didn't see any of Damian Harris the rest of the game. He actually left the game with let me look it up really quick, what the Patriots called a rib injury. I don't know if it's just a coincidence that it also happened after the fumble and then he didn't touch the ball the rest of the game. He was pretty effective before that fumble and was this close to having a second touchdown, 14 carries for 58 yards and the score. Rhamondre Stevenson didn't really do much with his work DVR. He got 11 carries, though. 23 yards in those 11 carries, so that really doesn't get you all excited. But the 11 carries plus the Damian Harris fumble, plus the fact that we know Bill Belichick has very little patience for this, and Damian Harris this was not Damian Harris's first big fumble of the season. You put that all together, maybe there's a role for Stevenson to play in these next couple of weeks.
There could be. I mean, I thought Harris looked pretty good before the injury overall, like on a per carry basis. So I still see Stevenson as a little bit more of a lottery ticket to stash away in deeper leagues than someone that I'm going to feel good about playing even with bye week starting up.
Yeah, I'm totally there with you. Someone to have in your mind as you are going through the waiver bidding process these next couple of days. Devontae Booker, Marques Callaway, Cadarius Tony. Those are 3 guys you're going to want top of mind. Alex Collins, Rhamondre Stevenson, Rashad Penny. Those are guys who maybe are in that next or maybe even 2 full tiers down as you are going through waivers the next couple of days. And, of course, we'll tackle this in full on the Monday episode of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. That's going to do it for this little short edition of the Athletic Fantasy Football Podcast. For Derek Van Riper, I am Michael Beller. Enjoy. Bills and Chiefs should be a fun one. Whatever you need, we hope you get it. Let's go clinch those wins, lock them up. We'll talk to you soon.